Good afternoon, everyone. And we are the Group 8, and I am Team Heidi Sinoronya, and we will tackle about crime mapping. So, first is the objectives. At the end of our report, the student will be able to, first is to define crime mapping and its underlying principles. Next is to enumerate the contribution of crime mapping to sound decision in police planning and operational activities. Next is to recognize the importance of crime mapping in supporting a number of police processes and operational activities. Fourth is to identify how crime maps are created properly. Next is to differentiate every types of crime maps. Next is to understand the usefulness of GIS to law enforcement. And lastly, to be acquainted on how GIS is useful to law enforcement. So, next is methodologies. Methodologies, there are 5. First is interactive. Second is individual reflection. And next is group discussion. Fourth is group activities. And lastly, pre-test. Introduction. For the introduction of crime mapping, crime analysts can overlay other data sets such as census demographics, locations of pawn shops, schools, and etc. to better understand the underlying causes of crime. So underlying means pinagbabatayan o may pinagbabatayan. So kailangan talaga na may pinagbabatayan ka dun sa isang cause ng crime. And also, it helps the law enforcement administrator na mag-isip ng mga strategies to deal with the problem. GIS is also useful for law enforcement operations such as allocating police officers. So yung mga allocated police officers, sila rin yung mga pinapadala sa mga emergencies. Yung GIS nga po pala is matatakel din po mamaya, so hindi ko na siya i-discuss. Hindi ko na po siya i-discuss. Crime mapping and analysis has incorporated spatial data analysis techniques that add statistical rigor. So, ano nga ba yung statistical rigor? It is, for statistical rigor, you needed to make a valid conclusion from data and address inherent limitations of spatial data, including spatial autocorrelation and spatial heterogeneity. So, ano nga ba yung spatial autocorrelation? It is the term that used to describe the presence of systematic spatial variation in a variable, while spatial heterogeneity, it is the property generally described to a landscape or to a population. And also, spatial data analysis helps one to analyze crime data and better understand why and not just where the crime is occurring. Crime mapping techniques. These efforts developed that led to the spread of crime mapping elsewhere. Crime analysts use crime mapping and analysis to help law enforcement management, particularly dun sa chief of police o yung commander, to make better decisions. Yung kanina sinabi ko yung mga strategies or formulated strategies rather, target resources, as well as for tactical analysis in crime forecasting and geographic profiling. There are other related approaches with terms including information-led policing, intelligence-led policing, problem-oriented policing, and community policing. So yung intelligence-led policing, it allows the police department to utilize data and information in order to a better evaluation or better evaluate crime trends and crime issues. While problem-oriented policing It is the diagnosing and solving problems that are increasing crime risk, while community policing, it allows officers to continuously operate dun sa isang area para lang makakreate ng isang stronger bond sa mga citizens doon sa isang community na yon. From a research and policy perspective, ang crime mapping daw is used to understand the patterns of incarceration and recidivism. So, yung incarceration is yung pagkakakulong or putting someone in jail or in prison, while recidivism is convicted criminal to reoffend. And also, it helps target resources and programs, evaluate crime prevention or crime reduction programs like Neighborhood Watch, and further understanding of causes of crime. Mapping law enforcement report data can be an effective way daw na mag-analyze kung saan naganap yung isang crime. The resulting visual display can be combined with other geographic data, such as the locations of schools, parks, and industrial complexes, and used to analyze and investigate patterns of crime and help inform responses. So the past decade in particular has seen advances in analytical capabilities within the criminal justice community, and making it possible to add more geographic and social dimensions to statistical analysis to forecast where crimes are likely to occur. Historically, law enforcement agencies and police organizations ay gumagamit sila ng hard copy pin maps to chart criminal activity. But this map were static, and as crime rates increase, so sa pagtaas ng mga crimes, it is difficult to maintain kung yun lang yung gagamitin nila. So in recent years, with advances in quick and user-friendly software, manual pin mapping has given way to computerized crime mapping. So naging computerized na siya. There are many meaning of mapping. Mapping may refer to, actually there are 4. It is the cartography, fandom, logic, and mathematics. Cartography, it is the process of making a map. Fandom, a fandom subgenre centered on building and sharing animated maps. Logic, a synonym for functional predicate. Mathematics, a synonym for a mathematical functions. For the types of mapping, there are 10. Animated mapping, it is the depiction of events over time on a map. Brain mapping, it is the techniques used to study the brain. Data mapping, data element mappings between two distinct data models. While gene mapping is the assignment of DNA fragments to chromosomes. While mind mapping, it is the drawing of ideas and the relations among them. Pang-6 is yung projection mapping. The projection of videos on the surface of objects with irregular shapes. Robotic mapping, the creation of use of maps by robots. Spiritual mapping is the practice of some religions. While texture mapping, it is in computer graphics. And lastly, which is web mapping, it is the mapping of data delivered by geographic information systems. And that's all. And the next reporter is Aizara Param. she will tackle about what is crime mapping, contributions of crime mapping, usefulness of crime mapping, and creating a crime map.
What is crime mapping? So, crime mapping is a law enforcement tool which allow personnel to represent crimes visually on a map or a grid of a region. By organizing crime this way, law enforcement officer can identify patterns, areas of concern, and other information of interest which they can use in order to be more effective. It is common for such map to be released to the general public so that citizens can stay informed about areas of concern and patterns of crime in their areas. So, by the definition itself, so itong crime mapping is the effective way or the effective tool to identify, analyze, investigate a particular place where the crime occurs. So, ito yung ginagawa nilang basehan or ito yung ginagawa nilang pattern to distinguish what crime happens, where, and how they solve the problem in that particular area. So, ito rin yung nagsaserve as awareness or a news or information to the citizens to know what happening in that particular area for them also to avoid that place. So, para sa safety nila yon. Contributions of crime mapping. First, to display crime situation and criminal elements disposition operating geographical jurisdiction. So, yung nagagawa ng crime mapping is to display or to show the crime situation, the criminal elements or yung how the crime happen or how ano yung way ng pag-commit ng crime para ipakita sa mga residente yung geographical jurisdiction kasi yung persons na involved or na included here sa geographical jurisdiction is the residents, citizens. So, yon para maipakita sa kanila yung mga crime situation and yung to show the way of committing crime. So, second, to provide a basis for comparison in order to determine the significance of newly received data pertaining to criminal elements. So, katulad ng sinabi ko, yung criminal elements is way of how the crime commit. So, itong number 2, parang siya yung nag-e-explain sa example na may nangyayari in two particular place with the same crime or with the same element of crimes. Halimbawa, ito yung bagong nababalita ngayon sa TV na uso yung pagkidnap or pagkuha sa mga babae. Nangyari to in two different places pero same sila ng way ng pagkuha ng babae, yung isasakay sa sasakyan. So yun, itong crime mapping is ang ano din ito, ang contribution din ito sa tao is to, or sa law enforcement officer, is to compare the two situations or more for them to analyze if that two crime or two violations is related to each other. And 3, to provide a background for and basis for briefings and other required intelligence report pertaining to crimes and criminality situation. So parang yung 2 sa 3 parang ito rin nga yung nagiging basis nila sa mga briefing sa pag-analyze ng mga situation and sa mga pag-i-investigate nila. Kasama daw to sa intelligence report nila. 4. to provide the basis for overlays which graphically portray the criminality situation in a given jurisdiction. Yung katulad nga na sinabi ko kanina, sa paggawa or sa pagdetermine kasi ng crime, malalaman natin may iba't ibang way of how the crime committed. So, so every single day or every minute, the criminals can think other ways to commit crime, lalo na kung kabisado na ng mga law enforcement officers yung mga uh, galaw nila. 5. To assist in the determination of patterns of activities. 5. To assist in the 5. To assist in the determination of patterns of activities of criminal elements as well as future plans and operations. So, katulad nga nun, sinabi ko, paulit-ulit lang tayo na ang crime mapping kasi is yung nag-a-assist nga sa mga law enforcement or ito yung way nila to determine or to know the patterns of activities na ginagawa ng mga criminals. So, magagamit nila to as a future plans and operations. So, magagamit nila to how to think actions na makakapag-decrease or makakapag-prevent ng specific crime na nangyayari doon sa particular place. So, 6. To focus attention on possible intelligence gaps that requires redirection of the information collection efforts. In crime mapping, di ba, mas madedetermine natin kung saan lugar mas nangyayari yung crime. So, ito, yung magiging contribution ng crime mapping is makakapag-isip sila or mapagbibigyan pansin nila yung mas kailangan nilang pagtuunan. Yung lugar na mas may na mas napapangyarihan ng crime. Usefulness of crime mapping. Crime mapping is useful in supporting a number of police process and operational activities that includes the following. So, responding and directing police and community members calls for service and information. So, yun nga, nagiging way ang crime mapping for them to know saan sila magre-respond and magiging aware din yung mga tao dun sa particular place kung saan nangyayari yung crime. Supporting the briefing of patrol officers by identifying crimes that have recently occurred in the areas that have patrol or soon to patrol and what may happen in the future. So, paulit-ulit lang tayo. Ang crime mapping is nag-serve as them to identify crimes na nangyayari sa particular place. So, dito, sa pagpapatrol nila, mapapadali sa kanila kung saan sila mas dapat malimit magpatrol. At ano yung mga pwedeng mangyari dun sa place na yon if magpapatrol sila. So, 3, identifying crime hotspots for targeting, deploying, and allocating suitable crime reduction responses, including human and material resources for more effective policing activities. So, sa pagka-crime mapping, di ba, mas malalaman natin kung saan nga may mas nagaganap yung crime or yung tinatawag natin na hotspots or yung may mas higher cases of crimes na place. So, yung crime mapping is makakatulong para makaisip ng mga actions to decrease the crimes and paano yung magiging actions nila para mas maging effective yung pamamahala nila dun sa particular place to prevent crimes. 4. Through pattern analysis with other local data, helping effectively understand the crime distribution and explore the mechanism, dynamics, and generators to criminal activities. So, yung mechanism and dynamics is yung mga gap or time span na kalimitang oras na nagaganap yung crime. So, malalaman sa pattern analysis or sa local data and crime mapping kung anong oras nila kailangang mag-take ng action or mag-observe dun sa specific place. 5. Catching serial crime offenders, more particularly those involved in the commission of crimes against persons and property. So, sa tulungan ng crime mapping, dahil nga napag-aaralan yung, yung place, how the crime committed, what is the common time na common time kung saan nangyayari yung crime, is mas nagkakaroon ng idea ang mga law enforcement officers. That's why mas madami silang nahuhuli na offenders. So, monitoring the impact of crime, reduce initiatives as an outcome of utilization of crime maps, not only with the community members but as well as the criminal elements. So here, namomonitor nila yung impact or yung effect ng mga response nila sa place para ma-reduce or para ma-decrease yung mga crime na nangyayari sa place. So, 7, using crime map as a media to communicate to the public the crime statistic in their area and the responses that are being implemented to tackle crime problem. Tulad nung sinabi ko kanina sa introduction ko, nagiging way itong crime mapping or nagiging useful itong crime mapping para sa mga citizens to know to know the crime situation and kung saan nangyayari yung crime for them to avoid, para sa safety nila yon. And also for them to know their responsibility as a citizens and help their place. Creating a crime maps. Crime mapping has its roots in cartography and comes with its own set of rules and limitations. When publishing an article, authors always cite information resources when constructing a map cartographies. Always cite the source of the data and the software used to create the map. If citations are left out, the map is incomplete and user may misinterpret the informations displayed. So, para kapag nagpa-publish ka ng books or pag gumagawa ka ng research, you should cite sources. It is also recommended that map makers include disclaimers or additional information to eliminate any misinterpretations of the material. A variety of crime maps can be created using GIS software, but the three most common are pin maps, thematic maps, and associations of or integrated maps. For example, a map can be created to show when and where crime occurred, with what type of weapon was used, whether a victim was present, whether the victim was male or female, and so forth. So, once data such as the income level of female victim ages 18 and 25 is entered into a GIS database, the user can overlay that information with a specific crime such as recent occurrences of homicide or rapes. So, katulad yung nasabi ko kanina, di ba, na ang crime mapping is nag-help to compare uh, two different situation with a same crime crime elements or yung way ng pag-commit ng crime. Overlaying specific crimes with ethnic origins, age, and gender may inadvertently reveal the identity of a victim. Therefore, the creators of GIS data layers must be aware of confidential and sensitive data and the need to take precautions to protect victims' rights and privacy. In addition to plotting the geographical attributes of criminal phenomena, law enforcement agencies and police organizations seek answers to why a specific crime occurred in a certain area by highlighting aspect of crime on a map with neighborhood attributes. Crime analysis can contextualize the data and gain insight about why crimes occur. Some law enforcement agencies and law organizations use crime mapping to show where registered child sex offenders live. They compare the location of child sex offenders with the location of the town's school. A buffer zone is drawn around each school to observe how close the known offenders live to these potential targets. Crime mapping, di ba nabanggit ko kanina na nakakatulong ito sa investigation. So, katulad na nabanggit dito sa statement na to, nagsisix ng answers yung mga law enforcement agency to know why the crime happens or why the crimes occur. Na-highlight sa crime mapping yung way, kung paano, and the same idea of how the crime occurs. So, nagkakaroon ng idea yung mga law enforcement to investigate or nagkaroon sila ng idea how to start the investigations.
Hello, hello. Good day. I am Karina Tarijimoya. I am going to present types of crime mapping and what is geographical information system. Um, First, we have the types of crime mapping. First map is a pin map. A pin map is the simplest way to express data on a map. It plots a pin whenever there is a geographic location contained in your data. Zip code, street, state, country, and etc. You can then start to interact with your data or alternatively use the suite of features to analyze and enrich it. Pin maps which use to push pins to identify important locations. Have long help officer patrol, neighborhoods, and detective investigate crimes. It enables the police to create, update, duplicate, and distribute pin maps more easily. Um, we have here the pin maps example and advantage. In addition, a victim service provider can display the vicinity of crimes victim to better coordinate their effort with other providers. The pin map is one of the easiest maps to create, although the points of the map only shows location. They reveal a spatial significance that cannot be discerned using a tabular query. Maps are easier to use and easier to carry as one of its advantage. This is a pin map where we can use using our cell phone in the app called Google Maps. Second advantage of this map is they can show the Earth's entire surface or just a small part and can show even a small locality in a great detail. Next types of crime mapping, we have the thematic maps. A thematic map can identify the density value of particular attribute, such as the number of physical injuries, crime victim, service center, or victim compensation claims in a geographically defined boundary composed of a police stations, police community precinct, neighborhood census tract, or victim service provider center. Density value are used to create a map with shaded colors representing the difference value between the boundaries. The shading of thematic map range from light to dark, with the lightest shade representing the lowest value and the darkest shade represent the highest value. Thematic map shows the spatial distribution of identifiable Earth surface features. It provides a informational description over a given area rather than a description. By emphasizing on a specific theme or subject area, thematic maps portrays social, physical, political, cultural, economic, and sociological aspects of a city, state, region, nation, or a continent. This special purpose map normally include locational or reference information, such as place names or major water bodies, to help map readers familiarize themselves with the geographic area covered on the map. Thematic maps can be both qualitative and quantitative. These maps can be used for exploratory spatial data analysis, confirming hypotheses, synthesizing spatial data by revealing patterns in relationship, and also data presentation. These maps use selected geographic areas for the base data, such as coastlines, boundaries, and place only as points of reference for the phenomenon being mapped. Thematic map example, we have the legend, the population and percentage data, and its data presentation. Thematic map clearly shows geographic patterns that mirror patterns in the real worlds and phenomenon. The primary purpose of thematic map is to visually portray a non-visual phenomenon, usually the attributes of a geographic features. Next type of crime mapping, we have integrated maps. Integrated maps are usually a combination of a pin map and a thematic map. In this map, physical injuries and public housing units are identified with points, while the population demographics are represented with various shades of same color and organized by police district boundaries. Uh, in addition, with this type of map, it can view income, population, gender, ethnicity, and other factors within boundaries of police work by re-aggregating census data, information that has been more applicable to the police needs. The map allows strategic decision based on contextualized data, um, like integrating location data, saying where things are, or with all types of descriptive information, saying what things are like in there. Integrated map example, it is organized and we have the legend. Its advantage, with this type of map, it can view income, population, gender, ethnicity, and other factors within boundaries of police work by aggregating census data. Yes. Next is we have usefulness of GIS to law enforcers or enforcement. Using Geographical Information System (GIS), the crime analysis and police executives can overlay Other data sets such as census, demographics, locations of pawn shop, schools, etc. To better understand the underlying causes of crime and help law enforcement administrator to devise strategies to deal with the problem. GIS is also useful for law enforcement operations such as allocating police officer and dispatching emergencies. Mm. A geographic information system is a computer system for capturing, storing, checking, and displaying data related to position on Earth's surface by relating seemingly unrelated data. GIS can help individual and organization better understand spatial patterns and relationship, not just police enforcement, but everyone can use this geographic information system. GIS technology is a crucial part of spatial infrastructure, which the White House defines as the technologies, policies, standards, human resource, and related activities necessary to acquire, process, distributed, use, maintain, and preserve spatial data. Underlying theories that help explain spatial behavior of criminals include environmental criminology, routine activity theory, and rational choice theory. In recent years, crime mapping and analysis has incorporated spatial data analysis technique that adds statistical rigor and address inherent limitation of spatial data, including spatial autocorrelation and spatial heterogeneity. Spatial data analysis helps one analyze crime data and better understand why, not just where crime is occurring. Since GIS can use any information that includes location, the location can be expressed in many different ways, such as latitude, longitude, address, or CIP, that help crime analysts and police executives to render a crime. Uh, Next, how to get started with GIS. First, you have to consider what are the needs and goals. What are the needs and goals of you getting started with GIS? It is to build a GIS to address the needs and goals of the police organization and your agency. First, you must identify identify those needs. How will you use GIS? Will you use it to support management decisions, to evaluate existing initiatives and projects, and or as a predictive modeling tool to identify the location of future sub sub grants? Second, to consider with getting started with GIS, what types of queries needed? Um, if you purchase an off-the-shelf GIS software package, the system likely will contain an ad hoc type of querying capability. In other words, any data that you uploaded or integrated into the system can be accessed and queried. However, you may choose to customize the application to address your specific needs. Next, to consider what are base maps. Uh, Base maps are the foundation of a GIS. Typically, they comprise a straight center line and a geographic backdrop, such as the census tract GIP code and geographical location or boundaries. Street center lines are of almost every municipality, city, province, or region can be purchased from vendors or downloaded free from the internet. Next, to consider what data needs to be collected. Um, this is your objective. In addition, In addition to using your own data, you may want to integrate additional data from other sources, such as census figures, law enforcement data, and transportation information. The only instant in which this should occur will be if more than one agency is working with crime victims and the information sharing is allowed by state or by informed consent of the victims. Next to consider is what is data formats. Mapping system can integrate various data formats. However, the most common format is that of a database file, a file extension ending in .dbf. Fortunately, most spreadsheet tables can be converted easily to database files to make them ready for integration into a GIS. Next, we have is the data accurate and timely. Uh, it is critical that you know your data before using it in GIS. This is a problem of many users face when they begin to use their data in a spatial environment. Most agencies have been collecting addresses level data for years. Generally, the quality of this data has been led to the discretion and integrity of the person entering the data. The accuracy and standardization of this data will contribute to the overall ease of or difficulty with which the data is integrated into your GIS. Another issue is to consider is the timeliness of your data. Last but not the least, what is the hardware and software requirements? Some of the above questions can be answered by police officers who are familiar with the data your agency collects. However, when it comes to hardware and software requirements, it is better to consult with information technology or IT professionals who can help you define the GIS requirements based on the needs and budget of the police organization, more particularly at the city and municipal levels. That's all for our report. Thank you.